Earth burned beneath crimson skies. Barry Allen ran through streets that were cracking open, buildings collapsing behind him as he pushed his speed higher. The entity he fought was unlike anything in his experience. Not a metahuman, not an alien, something else entirely. Its form shifted constantly, never settling into one shape, its presence causing reality itself to fracture. Barry had fought world-ending threats before. Darkseid, Anti-Monitor, enemies that threatened entire dimensions. But this thing was different. His attacks passed through it without effect. Punches delivered at supersonic speed did nothing. Electricity channeled from the Speed Force caused no damage. The entity simply regenerated. Instantly. Completely. No wound remained for even a microsecond. Around them, the Justice League lay broken. Superman was down, his invulnerable body showing injuries that should have been impossible. Wonder Woman's armor was shattered. Green Lantern's constructs had failed. Batman was coordinating evacuation efforts from the Watchtower, but even he had no strategy for this, no weakness to exploit, no plan that could work. The entity reached for Barry, its appendages extending with impossible speed. Barry dodged, running faster, buying time. That was all he could do now. Buy time. Let the League recover. Let Batman think. Let someone somewhere figure out how to stop this thing, before it consumed Earth entirely.
What are you? Why are you doing this?
The entity's response was not words, but sensation. Images flooding Barry's mind. Hunger. Endless hunger. Not for food or energy, but for existence itself. The entity consumed realities. 8 dimensions. It had crossed from somewhere outside the multiverse, and Earth was simply the first course. Barry ran harder. The entity gave chase, its form flowing through space like water. They moved through Central City, through the ruins of what had been a functioning metropolis hours ago. Every step Barry took, the entity matched. Every acceleration, every shift in direction, the entity followed. It was learning, adapting, getting faster. Barry's mind raced as fast as his body. He couldn't win, couldn't fight, couldn't stop this thing. But maybe he could delay it. Buy time for Earth, for the universe. If he could lead it away, if he could make it chase him instead of destroying everything here, maybe that would be enough. He made his decision in a fraction of a second. Grabbed the entity. The contact burned, reality warping where their bodies touched. But Barry held on. And he ran. Faster than he had ever run. Faster than light. Faster than thought. He pushed the Speed Force to its absolute limit and beyond. The world became a blur. Then the world disappeared entirely. They were moving through space now, Earth shrinking behind them. The entity struggled in his grip, trying to break free, but Barry held tight. His body screamed with the effort. His connection to the Speed Force was straining. But he kept running, past the moon, past Mars, past Jupiter. The solar system vanished in seconds. Stars became streaks of light. Galaxies were points that appeared and disappeared before perception could register them. Barry was moving so fast that atoms were splitting around him. Nuclear reactions triggered by his passage. A trail of fusion fire stretching across the cosmos. Past the Milky Way, past Andromeda, past the local group. The observable universe was falling away behind them. And still Barry ran. The entity in his arms was changing, its form destabilizing from the speed. Whatever it was, it had never experienced velocity like this. Nothing had. Time began to fracture. Barry could feel it breaking around him. Past, present, and future existed simultaneously. He saw Earth as it had been, as it was, as it would be, all at once. The time stream itself was coming apart under the strain of his speed, and then they crossed a threshold. The last light of the universe disappeared. They were in blackness now, complete and total. Not the darkness of space, but the absence of space. the region beyond the edge of the universe where the Big Bang's expansion had not yet reached, where existence itself had not yet formed. Barry's grip on the entity faltered. His connection to the Speed Force was breaking. He was too far from Earth, too far from the source of his power. The lightning that crackled around his body began to fade. His speed began to drop. And in that moment of vulnerability, reality broke. Not bent, not cracked. Broke. Completely. The fabric of existence tore like paper, and through the tear came something worse than darkness, a void that was not void. Anti-existence, the opposite of reality. Barry felt himself pulled in multiple directions simultaneously. His body was here and there and nowhere all at once. The entity screamed, a sound that had no place in physics. Then it was gone, pulled through the tear into whatever lay beyond. Barry tried to pull back, tried to reverse course, tried to return to Earth, but his body wouldn't respond. The Speed Force connection was severed. He was falling, spinning, breaking apart and reforming and breaking apart again. Then blackness. Total and complete. The Adeptus Mechanicus vessel Omnissiah's Blessing detected the anomaly 12 hours into its survey mission of Sector Obscurus. Tech Priest Dominus Call 7 observed the readings with mechanical interest, his augmented eyes processing data faster than any baseline human could manage.
Magos, we have an unidentified energy signature. Location, 3,000 kilometers off our starboard side. Classification, unknown. Characteristics, unlike any recorded phenomena in Imperial databases.
Magos Explorator Ven 9 moved to the sensor station, his multiple mechadendrites interfacing with the ship's systems. Data flowed directly into his consciousness. Temperature readings, radiation signatures, gravitational fluctuations. All of it pointed to something impossible. An object that should not exist, emitting energy that followed no known physical laws.
Deploy recovery servitors. If this is a technological artifact, we must secure it for study. If it is a biological entity, we must ensure it poses no threat to the Omnissiah's works.
The servitors launched from the Omnissiah's Blessing, their basic programming guiding them toward the anomaly. What they found floating in the void was a body, human in appearance. Wearing a suit of red material that was neither metal nor cloth, the body was unconscious. Life signs were present, but erratic. Heartbeat fluctuating between 0 and 200 beats per minute. Brain activity showing patterns that made no biological sense. The servitors grabbed the body with mechadendrite claws and hauled it back to the ship, into the cargo bay, into a containment field that could hold a genestealer if necessary. Tech priests gathered around, examining their find with instruments that probed every aspect of his physical form.
Human morphology. Baseline genetics with no detectable mutations. Age, approximately 30 standard years. Origin, unknown. The suit he wears is constructed of materials not present in any Imperial database. Recommend extreme caution.
Magos Ven 9 approached the containment field, studying the unconscious figure. Something about this discovery troubled his logic centers. The human had appeared in the void. No ship nearby. No debris suggesting escape pod or crash. Just a body floating in space wearing a suit that kept him alive. Impossible, yet here it was.
Establish a quarantine perimeter. Contact the Adeptus Astra Telepathica. We require a psyker to determine if this individual poses a warp-based threat. Until clearance is received, no one enters containment without full battle servitor escort.
The message was sent through astropathic relay. Response came 3 hours later. A sanctioned psyker would arrive at their location within 2 days. Until then, maintain containment and observation. Do not interact with the subject. Do not attempt communication. Simply watch and record. Barry woke slowly. His head felt like it had been split open and filled with concrete. His body ached in ways he didn't know were possible. He tried to move and found himself floating. Not falling, floating. In some kind of energy field that held him suspended in midair. His eyes focused. He was in a room. Metal walls. Strange symbols carved into every surface, figures standing around him. Humans, but wrong somehow. Half their bodies were machine, mechanical arms, augmented eyes. One of them had replaced most of his face with metal plating and glowing optics.
Where am I? What happened?
The figures didn't respond. They simply watched him with those augmented eyes, recording, analyzing, treating him like a specimen rather than a person. Barry tried to phase through the containment field. His molecules should have vibrated at frequencies that would let him pass through solid matter. Nothing happened. He tried to tap into the speed force. Felt nothing. The connection was gone, or so distant he couldn't reach it.
I need to get back. There's something attacking Earth, my Earth. I need to get back now.
Still no response. The figures continued their silent observation. Barry's frustration grew. He was trapped in some kind of spaceship with people who were part machine and couldn't or wouldn't talk to him. This was wrong. All of it. The space outside the windows looked wrong. The stars were positioned incorrectly. The constellations were unfamiliar. 2 days passed. Barry remained in containment. The machine people brought him food. Paste in tubes that tasted like recycled protein. Water that had a metallic aftertaste. He ate because he had to. His metabolism was still faster than normal even without access to the speed force. Starvation would come quickly if he didn't eat. He tried talking to his captors. Asked questions. Demanded answers, pleaded for help. Nothing worked. They observed him like scientists studying an interesting bacteria culture. When he tried to touch the containment field again, alarms sounded. Servitors moved into position with weapons that looked like they could vaporize him instantly. On the third day, something changed. The door to the containment room opened and 3 new figures entered. These were different from the machine people. They wore armor that was ornate, covered in religious symbols and purity seals. 2 carried weapons that crackled with energy. The third, a woman with severe features and eyes that seemed to look through him rather than at him, approached the containment field. The woman spoke in a language Barry didn't understand. Harsh syllables that sounded like orders. The containment field adjusted, allowing her to step partially through. She extended one hand toward Barry, and he felt something touch his mind. Not physically, psychically. Someone was trying to read his thoughts.
Get out of my head.
He instinctively pulled back, but the mental pressure increased. Images flashed through his mind. Earth, the Justice League, his wife Iris, the Speed Force, Central City, the entity he had fought. All of it laid bare for this woman to examine. Barry tried to resist but didn't know how. His mental defenses were non-existent against someone who could actually invade thoughts. The woman withdrew after several minutes. She turned to the others and spoke in that same harsh language. Barry caught tones of concern, maybe suspicion. One of the armored figures stepped forward and responded. Their conversation was brief. Then the woman turned back to Barry and spoke, this time in English. Broken English with an accent he couldn't place, but comprehensible.
You are not human. Your presence causes disturbances in the warp. You claim to come from another reality, another Earth. This is heresy, or Xenos corruption. You will be taken to Holy Terra for judgment by the Inquisition.
I am human. I'm from Earth. Just not your Earth. Look, I don't have time for this. There's something dangerous where I came from. I need to find a way back before it destroys everything.
The interrogator's expression didn't change.
Terra is the only Earth, the birthplace of humanity. All other claims are lies or delusions. You will submit to judgment. Resistance will result in immediate termination.
You don't understand. The entity I fought, it eats realities. If I don't stop it, it will eventually come here. To your universe. To your Earth.
The interrogator turned to leave.
Delusions. Xenos corruption, speaking through human form. The Inquisition will determine truth. Until then, you remain contained.
Bear felt panic rising. These people didn't understand. Didn't believe him. They thought he was some kind of alien or corrupted human. They were going to imprison him, possibly kill him, while Earth died, and the entity moved on to consume more realities. He couldn't let that happen. He focused. pushed past the absence of the Speed Force connection, pushed into something deeper. The fundamental energy that powered his abilities wasn't just external. It was part of him, part of his cells, part of his very atoms. He had always accessed it through the dimensional barrier, but maybe, if he tried hard enough, he could access the residual energy still in his body. Lightning began to crackle around him, not the bright yellow of the Speed Force. Darker, red, tinged, energy pulled from cellular reserves rather than dimensional connection. It was weak, nothing compared to his normal power. But it was something. Barry moved, not fast by his standards. Maybe Mach 3. Maybe Mach 4. But fast enough. He phased through the containment field, grabbed the interrogator's weapon, disarmed the 2 guards before they could react. 5 people in the room. All of them frozen in shock at what they had just witnessed. Barry stood in the center of the room, holding 3 weapons he didn't know how to use, facing people who thought he was a monster.
I don't want to hurt anyone. I just want to go home. Please, just let me go.
The interrogator recovered first. Her hand moved towards something on her belt. Barry was faster. He grabbed her wrist, stopping the motion. Their eyes met. Hers were filled with a mixture of fear and determination. His were filled with desperation.
Please, you have to understand, I'm not your enemy. I'm trying to save lives. Trillions of lives across multiple universes. Just let me find a way back.
You are Xenos. You are heresy. You will be purged.
She twisted in his grip, breaking free with a combat move he hadn't anticipated. Her knee came up toward his stomach. Barry dodged, released her, backed toward the door. The 2 guards were recovering, raising their weapons. The machine people in the corridor outside were responding to alarms. This was going bad fast. Barry ran. Through the corridor. Through groups of servitors that tried to grab him. Through machine people who shouted in that harsh language. Through door after door of this massive ship. His speed was returning slowly. The residual energy in his cells was regenerating. Not enough to reach his normal velocity, but enough to move faster than these people could track. The ship's interior was a maze, corridors branching in all directions, rooms filled with machinery he didn't recognize, Gothic architecture mixed with advanced technology in ways that made no aesthetic sense. Everything was covered in skulls and religious symbols and inscriptions in that language he couldn't read. He found what looked like an engine room. Massive generators filling a space the size of an aircraft hangar. Energy flowing through conduits that ran along the walls. And in the center, something that made his enhanced senses scream warnings. A rift. A tear in space. Swirling colors that hurt to look at. Energy that felt wrong on every level. Barry stopped at the edge of the rift, staring into it. This was how these people traveled faster than light. Not by moving fast, but by cutting through space itself. Through this rift that led somewhere else, somewhere that his instincts told him was dangerous beyond comprehension. Behind him, footsteps. Heavy footsteps. He turned to see armored figures entering the engine room, not the guards from before. These were bigger, 7 feet tall. Armor that was inches thick. Weapons that looked like they could take down tanks. They moved with purpose toward him.
Halt! Submit to Imperial authority or face termination.
Barry looked at the rift, looked at the advancing guards, made his decision. He ran toward the rift. The guards opened fire. Bolts of energy streaked past him. One grazed his shoulder, burning through the suit. Pain flared. He ignored it, focused on the rift, on moving fast enough to reach it before they killed him. He hit the rift at Mach 20. His body passed through the membrane between realities, and everything went wrong. The rift was not empty space. It was occupied, filled with something that had been waiting, watching, drawn by Barry's unique energy signature. The moment he entered, it latched onto him, poured through the opening he had created, used his velocity and momentum to tear the rift wider. Barry tumbled through impossible geometries, dimensions that existed at right angles to normal space. His mind couldn't process what he was seeing. Entities that were not physical but pure thought-given shape. Colors that didn't exist in normal spectrum. Sounds that were visible and sights that were audible. And then he was through. On the other side. But not alone. Something had followed. Something had used him as a doorway. He collapsed on metal decking, his body shaking from the transition. Around him, alarms were screaming. Red emergency lights flashing. The ship was shaking. Through the rift behind him came demons. That was the only word that fit. Creatures of nightmare given physical form. They poured through by the dozens, by the hundreds. Their bodies were wrong. Too many limbs. Faces that shifted between expressions of rage and ecstasy. Weapons that looked like they were made from bone and metal fused together. The guards who had been chasing Barry turned to face this new threat. Their weapons opened fire. Explosive rounds tore through demon flesh. The creatures screamed and died, and more took their place. For everyone killed, 3 more emerged from the rift. They were flooding into the ship, overwhelming the defenses. Barry tried to stand. His legs wouldn't cooperate. The transition through the rift had drained what little energy he had left. He crawled toward cover as battle erupted around him. The guards were fighting with discipline and skill, but they were being pushed back. The demons were too many, too fast, too resilient. One of the creatures spotted Barry, turned toward him. Its face was a mass of eyes and teeth. It moved on legs that bent in too many directions, raised a weapon that dripped something that might have been blood or acid or both. Barry tried to dodge, tried to move. Nothing happened. His body was done. The demon raised its weapon. A guard's bolt round took its head off before it could fire. The body collapsed. Another demon took its place. Then another. Barry was going to die here. In this ship. In this universe. Killed by monsters because he had tried to run fast enough to save Earth. The ship shook violently. Something had exploded. Structural damage. The metal decking beneath Barry cracked. Atmosphere began venting. He could hear the whistle of air escaping into void. Emergency bulkheads were slamming shut throughout the ship, containing the breach. Sealing sections, trapping people and demons in isolated zones. Barry found himself in a corridor that was sealing at both ends. 5 demons. 3 guards. All of them trapped together. The guards didn't hesitate. They opened fire at point-blank range. The demons charged. What followed was close combat that was brutal and fast, and utterly without mercy. A demon got past the guards. Line. Came at Barry with claws extended. He rolled away. Too slow. The claws caught his leg. Tore through the suit. Through flesh. Through muscle. Pain exploded up his spine. The demon raised its claws for a killing strike. A guard's power sword took it through the chest. The demon died shrieking. More explosions. The ship was coming apart. Sections were depressurizing. Fires were spreading. The structural integrity was failing. Whatever these people had built, it couldn't handle this level of assault. The demons were destroying it from the inside. Barry's enhanced healing was already working on his leg. Slower than normal. Slower than it should be. But working. He could feel tissue knitting back together, feel bone repairing. In a few minutes he might be able to stand. In an hour he might be able to run. But he didn't have an hour. The ship was dying now. The corridor's emergency lighting died. Darkness filled the space. Barry heard screaming. Human. Screaming. The guards were dying. Being torn apart by enemies they couldn't see in the dark. He tried to help them. Tried to do anything. But his body still wouldn't move properly. Then light. Harsh white light that made him shield his eyes. New figures entering the corridor. These wore different armor, white instead of black. They carried weapons that glowed with inner radiance. And when they fired, the demons didn't just die. They burned, consumed by white flames that left nothing behind. The new guards moved through the corridor with precision, killing demons, securing the area. One of them spotted Barry and moved toward him. The armor was covered in inscriptions and symbols. The faceplate was a skull painted white. When the guard spoke, his voice was filtered through a voxcaster that made it sound mechanical.
Identify yourself. State your purpose aboard this vessel.
I'm Barry Allen. I'm from another universe. I didn't mean for this to happen. Those things followed me through the rift. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
The guard considered this for a moment.
You are the Xenos, the one who caused this incursion. You will be terminated immediately for crimes against the Imperium.
He raised his weapon. Barry closed his eyes. This was it. Killed by people he had tried to save. Killed for running too fast and ending up in the wrong universe. Killed for trying to save Earth from something that nobody here would even believe existed. The weapon never fired. Instead, more alarms. Different alarms. These were deeper, more urgent. The ship's power fluctuated. Gravity went out for 3 seconds before coming back. The guard lowered his weapon and touched his helmet, clearly receiving communication from elsewhere.
All units withdraw to evacuation positions. The ship is lost. Repeat, the Omnissiah's blessing is lost. Emperor, protect us all.
The guard turned and ran, left Barry lying in the corridor with dead demons and dying guards. The ship continued to shake, continued to come apart. Barry forced himself to stand. His legs screamed in protest, but held his weight. He limped toward the nearest bulkhead door, had to find an escape pod, had to find some way off this ship before it exploded or vented all its atmosphere or whatever ships in this universe did when they died. The corridors were chaos, people running in all directions, some toward escape pods, some toward the demon incursions, weapons ready, some simply standing frozen in shock. Barry pushed through the crowds. Nobody tried to stop him. Everyone was too focused on survival. He found an escape pod bay. Dozens of pods lining the walls. Half were already launched. People were piling into the remaining ones, fighting for space, screaming at each other. The discipline Barry had seen earlier was gone. This was panic. This was every person for themselves. Barry squeezed into a pod that was almost full. 10 people in a space meant for 8. The door sealed. The pod launched. They were thrown back as acceleration hit. Through the small viewport, Barry watched the ship recede. The Omnissiah's blessing was breaking apart. Sections were separating. Fires were visible through hull breaches. It was dying. And then it exploded. Not all at once. Section by section. Starting from where Barry had entered the rift and spreading outward. Each explosion triggered more explosions. The ship's reactor went critical. The detonation was bright enough to make Barry shield his eyes even through the pod's filtered viewport. Debris spread in all directions. The pod was hit by fragments, small ones, nothing that penetrated the hull. But each impact sent them spinning. The internal gravity compensators couldn't handle it. Everyone inside was thrown around like dice in a cup. Barry hit his head on something metal. Stars filled his vision. When his sight cleared, he looked around the pod. Of the 10 people who had been inside, 3 were unconscious. 2 were bleeding from head wounds. The rest looked like they were in shock. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. They just sat there in the darkness of the pod, listening to the life support systems hum and wondering if anyone would come to pick them up. Through the viewport, Barry could see other pods. Dozens of them, all drifting in the debris field that had been their ship. And among the pods, moving through the wreckage, were the demons. They were still here, still hunting. Barry watched as one attached itself to a nearby pod. Watched as it began tearing through the hull. Watched as atmosphere vented and the people inside died in seconds. The demon turned toward their pod, began moving in their direction. Its movements in zero gravity were wrong. It didn't push off debris like physics would demand. It simply moved, floating through space as if it were swimming through water. Getting closer, closer. It reached their pod, attached itself to the hull. Barry could hear it outside, tearing at the metal, trying to get in. One of the other occupants, a woman in the uniform of the machine people, pulled a weapon from her belt. A pistol of some kind. She pointed it at the hull where the demon was working. Fired 3 times. The rounds punched through the metal. Through the demon on the other side. Its shrieking was audible even through vacuum and hull plating. Then, silence. The demon drifted away, dead or dying. But the damage was done. The hull was breached. Atmosphere was venting. Slowly. Not an explosive decompression, but a leak that would kill them in minutes rather than seconds. The woman pulled something else from her belt. A repair putty of some kind. She pressed it against the holes. The putty hardened instantly. The leak stopped. But everyone in the pod knew it was temporary. They needed rescue soon or they would die anyway. Hours passed. The pod drifted, its power slowly draining, life support systems gradually failing. The temperature dropped. Barry could see his breath now. The other occupants were huddled together for warmth. Nobody talked. What was there to say? They were dead, just waiting for it to be official. Then light, harsh light flooding through the viewport. A ship. Massive compared to the pods. It was moving through the debris field, collecting survivors. Rescue. They were going to be rescued. The pod shook as a tractor beam grabbed it, drew it toward the ship's cargo bay. The pod locked into a docking cradle. The door opened. Fresh air rushed in. Figures in environmental suits entered, began checking the occupants, pulling out the unconscious ones. Treating the injured, Barry was grabbed by armored hands and dragged out of the pod, into the cargo bay, into another nightmare. The bay was filled with survivors, hundreds of them, all being processed, sorted. The injured sent one direction, the healthy sent another. Machine people examining everyone with augmented eyes and mechanical instruments, and among them more of those guards in white armor, watching. Weapons ready. Barry was pushed toward a processing station. A machine person grabbed his arm, scanned him with a device that beeped and flashed. The machine person's augmented eyes went wide. He stepped back and shouted something in that harsh language. The white-armored guards responded immediately. Surrounded Barry, weapons raised. One of them spoke through his voxcaster.
The Xenos. The one responsible for the incursion. You will be contained and transported to Holy Terra for judgment. Do not resist or you will be terminated.
I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I was trying to escape. I was trying to get home. I didn't know those things would follow me.
The guard said nothing, simply grabbed Barry with one armored hand and dragged him toward a different section of the cargo bay, toward containment cells, toward imprisonment. Barry didn't resist. What was the point? He had no speed, no powers, no way to fight these people. He had destroyed their ship, gotten hundreds if not thousands killed. He was a criminal here, a monster. The cell door sealed behind him, small space, 3 meters by 3 meters, a bunk, a toilet, nothing else. Barry sat on the bunk and put his head in his hands. Everything had gone wrong. Earth was dying. He was trapped in another universe. The entity was probably consuming his reality, while he was stuck here, unable to do anything about it. And worse, he had brought demons into this universe. Had opened a doorway that let them through. How many more ships would die because of what he had done? How many more people would be killed by the entities that followed him? He had tried to be a hero, tried to save Earth by leading the entity away, and instead he had made everything worse. The ship began to move. Barry could feel the acceleration even through the cell walls. They were going somewhere. To Terra, the guards had said. To Holy Terra for judgment. He would be taken before whatever authorities governed this brutal place. And they would decide what to do with him. Probably execution. He had seen how these people treated threats. No mercy, no hesitation, just elimination. Barry lay back on the bunk and stared at the ceiling. The metal was covered in those same inscriptions he had seen everywhere. Religious symbols and text in that language he couldn't read. This universe was dark, brutal, filled with people who were half machine and violence that seemed constant. This wasn't like his Earth. not like any Earth he had ever visited. He closed his eyes and tried to connect to the Speed Force again. Reached out with senses he had trained for years to use. Felt nothing. The connection was severed. Maybe permanently. Maybe the tear in reality had broken something fundamental. Maybe Barry Allen would never run fast again. The implications of that were staggering. Without speed, he was just a man. A forensic scientist with no lab. A hero with no powers. Useless. Trapped. Doomed. He had given up everything, trying to save Earth. And for what? To die in another universe. To be executed by people who thought he was a monster. Sleep came eventually. Exhaustion won out over despair. Barry drifted into unconsciousness. And while he slept, the ship continued toward Terra. Toward Holy Terra. Toward the heart of an Imperium that would decide his fate. An Imperium that showed no mercy to aliens. No forgiveness to those who threatened humanity. No quarter to anything that opened doorways for demons. In the cargo bay, technicians examined the wreckage of the escape pod. Analyzed the breach where the woman had fired through the hull. Found residue from the demon that had been killed. The residue was unlike anything in their databases. Not chaos taint. Not Xenos biology. Something else. Something new. A report was filed, sent up the chain of command, flagged as priority. The Xenos in the holding cell had brought something unprecedented into the Imperium. Something that could survive in hard vacuum. Something that seemed to phase through normal matter. Something that killed with ruthless efficiency. More ships were being dispatched to the debris field, to study what remained. To collect samples. To determine the full scope of what had come through when the Xenos entered the warp rift. Early estimates suggested dozens of entities. Maybe hundreds. All of them loose now in Imperial space. The incursion was being classified as major. Not catastrophic yet, but major. Resources would be allocated. Kill teams would be assembled. The Inquisition would be informed. This could not be allowed to spread. Could not be permitted to infect other vessels or worlds. Whatever these entities were, they would be hunted down and destroyed. All of them. And the Xenos who brought them would face the full consequences of his actions. Terra awaited. The Inquisition awaited. Judgment awaited. Barry Allen had run faster than light to save his world. And in doing so, he had condemned himself to a fate worse than any villain he had ever fought. The ship traveled through the void toward humanity's birthplace. Toward the throne world. Toward the Emperor who sat on a throne of gold and commanded the loyalty of trillions. Toward a justice system that knew only one punishment for those who brought demons into the Imperium. Death.